Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are pulling back the curtain on the most famous city park in the entire world. We step into this landscape and it feels so eternal, so wild, but it's actually a masterclass in relentless, completely invisible human engineering.
So let's just dive right into this with a pretty provocative question. Think about the last time you saw a picture of Central Park. Or, hey, maybe you've even been lucky enough to wander its trails yourself. When you stand under the canopy of those ancient-looking trees, are you actually experiencing nature?
Well, the mind-blowing truth here, it is entirely artificial. To create the park we know today, 19th century workers had to manually move nearly 5 million cubic yards of stone, earth, and topsoil. To put that crazy number into perspective, imagine filling several Empire State Buildings to the absolute brim with dirt. None of this happened organically, folks. The whole shebang was sculpted by hand.
And when you zoom out, you can really comprehend the sheer scale of the result. You've got this massive 843-acre green rectangle just slicing directly through the dense concrete grid of Manhattan. It's such a jarring contrast. But that greenery isn't some untouched remnant of the original island. It is a highly manufactured oasis, carved right into the center of the city. To completely shatter that illusion for you, every single gurgling stream and sweeping meadow was heavily engineered. The original land? It was just rocks and swamps. So workers literally used gunpowder to blast the bedrock. They drained the swamps, piped in city water to create 7 entirely man-made lakes, and then manually planted 500,000 trees and shrubs. So next time you're casually eating a hot dog on a park bench, just remember, you're sitting on a landscape born from pure, grueling industrial sweat.
Now, behind all this massive effort was a real clash of visions. On one side, you had the park's first chief engineer, Egbert Viel. He basically viewed the land as a giant sanitation problem, a drainage project that was absolutely vital for public health. But on the other side, architect Frederick Law Olmsted envisioned this sweeping pastoral fantasy. He wanted a democratic escape for people of all backgrounds. Ultimately, Olmsted's artistic vision won out, but it only survives today because it was built directly on top of Vieli's obsessive drainage foundations.
But it is absolutely crucial we remember that this grand artistic vision came with a severe human cost. The land they chose wasn't just sitting there empty. The government actually used eminent domain, seizing property, to clear the footprint. This uprooted thriving established communities, most notably Seneca Village, which was an early settlement of free Black Americans. It's a really vital, sobering reality of how the park was actually born.
Okay, so once they finally had the land, they faced this absolute nightmare of a design hurdle: city traffic. Spanning 51 blocks, the city demanded 4 roads cutting right across the park. Olmsted and his partner Calvert Vaux solved this brilliantly by just hiding the chaos. They blasted through 450-million-year-old Manhattan schist to build the roads entirely below the park's surface. By submerging the traffic, they preserved the illusion of nature. You can walk the park today and never see a modern taxi crossing your woodland path. It's genius.
But here's the thing. Building an artificial landscape, that's really only half the battle. The real war is keeping it alive. Over the decades, city politics severely complicated the upkeep. Despite a brief, pretty successful revival in 1934 under Robert Moses, his resignation in 1960 left the park without any ongoing maintenance plan. Zero. By the 1970s, the century-old preserve wasn't a pastoral fantasy anymore. It was forsaken, dilapidated, and honestly pretty dangerous. So, the ultimate takeaway here is that a man-made park absolutely requires relentless man-made upkeep. It is not self-sustaining. Without a plan, the park literally collapsed in on itself. The 100-year-old subterranean drainage crumbled, the lush meadows turned into what locals grimly called the Great Dust Bowl, and those historic sweeping structures, they just deteriorated into sad graffiti-covered ruins.
The park was dying, and the city was essentially bankrupt. But enter the modern heroes of our story. In 1980, facing the total loss of this amazing civic treasure, a handful of far-sighted New Yorkers, city officials, and local advocacy groups united. Together, they formed a private, non-profit organization, the Central Park Conservancy.
Their mission was, frankly, incredibly ambitious. They wanted to preserve and celebrate the park as a sanctuary from urban life. This was nothing short of a massive, all-hands-on-deck rescue operation. I mean, they weren't just stepping in to pick up some litter on the weekends. Their goal was to totally resurrect Olmsted and Vaux's unified work of art from the bedrock up.
And the financial commitment required to reverse all those decades of neglect, it is absolutely staggering. Over the past 4 decades, the Conservancy has invested a jaw-dropping $1 billion into this park.
That is $1 billion raised purely to pull this landscape back from the brink and then continuously maintain it day in and day out. With that kind of funding, they were able to launch these just enormous restoration campaigns. They systematically breathed life back into the park, sweeping from the sheep meadow down in the south all the way up to the ravine in the north. But the crazy part is they didn't just fix what looked pretty on the surface, they actually rebuilt the deep invisible plumbing and the soil infrastructure that makes the entire ecosystem function.
Take Belvedere Castle, for example. Sitting way up on Vista Rock, it was designed to blend seamlessly with the natural schist. But by the 1970s, it was just a vandalized, empty shell. The Conservancy rescued it in 1983, turning it back into this stunning observation tower. And actually, here's a fun fact. It houses the city's official weather instruments. When you hear the New York City Weather Report on the news, yeah, that data is coming straight from this castle.
They also totally revitalized the breathtaking King Jagello Bronze Monument and the turtle pond right next to it. Thanks to their super careful engineered repairs of the water systems, this area is once again a thriving habitat. It draws in migrating birds and, get this, massive snapping turtles that grow up to 20 inches across. The wild nature absolutely returned, but only because the artificial habitat was meticulously repaired first.
But perhaps their most impressive feat, and this is a real game changer, happened in the late 90s, with the largest single restoration in the park's entire history. They transformed the Great Lawn, which, remember, had basically become a dust bowl, back into a luxurious 55-acre green oval. To pull that off, they literally had to dig down and repair the subterranean walls of an old 1840s reservoir buried deep beneath the grass just to get the drainage working again.
Today, the results absolutely speak for themselves. The park successfully hosts over 42 million visitors every single year. Just picture that. 42 million people stepping onto grass, paths, and bridges that would almost instantly erode and collapse without the Conservancy's relentless, daily, and largely invisible engineering support. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer today. Now that you know this landscape isn't really wild nature, but rather a highly fragile, man-made illusion, does it change the way you see it? Will we as a society continue to support the monumental funding and the daily dedication required to keep it alive? Because if Central Park's history proves one thing for sure, it's that a masterpiece only survives if we actively choose to maintain it.